Now, I would like to call up the brilliant Edney Freeman. We are so honored to have you and your lovely wife. Thank you so much for making the trek over. St. Tomian master artist, master, you name it, sculptor, educator. Yes, we can plug this in. I'm going to plug this in while he starts. Thank you.
I'm mic'd up.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be a part of this occasion. It's such a fitting title, Tides of Freedom. And I want to give my thanks to Brother George Tyson for his writing, because to start a project like this, you generally have to pretty much do some research, right? And find out a little bit about your subject. Over the years, I've learned a little bit about Buddhoe and the many different names he's had and things like that, right? But many years ago, I created like 10 different sketches of ideas that I would like to see in the public space. My work is intended, just like this work is, to be a part of public art. I believe in creating art for the public in spaces. Okay, now this, what you're looking at, is a, what do we call it? A maquette. A maquette is a small model of an idea, of a sculpture. This can be scaled up, but it couldn't be scaled down. Okay? I don't want to repeat much about what Sir, I'd like to call you Sir Tyson has contributed, but the point is, I fell in love with just the idea of who Buddhoe was. He was a chemist, a sugar chemist, okay? And not only that, he was a foreman, but you know, more than that, he was an inspiration to this movement for this slave revolt of 1848. And he has somewhat been maligned, you know, he was arrested and such, and banished from the island, sent to Trinidad, and ultimately ended up in New York. So if you want to learn more about him, you should read Mr. Tyson's contribution. I think it's in the Camino Folk. I saw some references to that. And there's another reference that I found with regards to him. And there are other sources, okay? I recently read an article in the St. Thomas Source that referenced Buddhoe, okay? So my interest with him began a long time ago. Like I said, about 2000, I was part of a show in St. Thomas, and it was at the Grand Hotel, and the owner at the time was Michael Paiwanski, okay? And he said to me, Edney, I know you're a sculptor. One day I want you to do a sculpture of Buddhoe riding his horse. And I said, you know, I put that down and I sketched it. I sketched like 10 different ideas or more, maybe a dozen. And I still have those sketches, and only 3 of those sketches have been realized at this point so far, publicly. Okay, so it started a long time ago, but here I am today introducing to you what I would call Buddhoe, Freedom Rider, We Free. What I intended to do here was to capture the exact moment that Buddhoe and his companions, I believe it was a Major Gillico, whatever his name is, did I pronounce it right? That they rode around together to quell the violence. His attempt was to quell violence. It wasn't to insurrect. Okay, so they have been maligning him as such, in my opinion. Okay, so what I tried to do in this sculpture is capture that moment when he actually rides around to the different plantations announcing, "We free." Okay, so Buddhoe is my hero. You know, I looked up profiles of outstanding Virgin Islands, and he's in there. Okay, and they didn't say much about him. You know, his life is pretty obscure, and the details and resources and writings about him are very minimal. But nevertheless, I felt necessary, the need to create that moment. okay? Now, some time ago, a gentleman, a lady friend of mine, presented to me a sketch of Buddhoe riding a horse. Now, what did I have to do as an artist? I pretty much have to embed myself in the moment in time as to this man. How did he live? You know, what did he see? How did he feel? What did he wear? Okay, so a simple thing like, when you're doing a sculpture like this, of course it starts with a framework. If you look at this piece here, you'll see an armature being supported by a piece that supports the weight. So what I had to do first is build an armature, a wire armature with styrofoam in it. So all you see is maybe an eighth of an inch of clay on top of wire and styrofoam. Okay? So that's some of the technical part of it, but some of the aspects of the work are very involved. Nothing here is random. You know, what you have to do, I think I made maybe, you know, they say in a particular day, a person makes 70,000 thoughts. I mean, to go into this, I would at least have had half of that, okay? Because what you have to do is decide the horse. I've never done a horse before, but I had to research a horse, see how it rears, okay? My initial sketch that I handed into Monica was actually a little different from that. I had an issue with his hoofs, okay? One of his hoofs was blocking one of the legs, if you look at it, right? So I raised up the hoof, raised up the leg. These are decisions that have to be made on the spot aesthetically and functionally, okay? So, for instance, how did he live? They say he wore a general's uniform, right? And I wouldn't know how he got that uniform, right? He wasn't really a general, was he? No. But somehow he came across this uniform and owned it and whatever, right? So I had to decide, well, okay, someone gave me a sketch of him riding his horse, but this sketch was so, I should have used. It was printed so many times, I couldn't tell what it was. But I had to research again to find out the costume that the soldiers wore at that time. Okay? So, you know, he was wearing a high hat and a general's uniform, but I wanted, and even his saddle. Okay, you gotta look at all this detail, my people, because, like I said, it's not random. Did he own a saddle? Can he afford to own a saddle? Okay, because a saddle is an expensive item. And then I had to make the decision as to whether to use a leather for the reins, or should I use a rope? Okay, rope is a little more difficult to capture in clay because it involves coils and twisting the coils and such, okay? So those are some of the decisions that go into making a sculpture of this sort, okay? Not to mention I had to ship this over on a blustery day at sea, 30 knots, winds and rough seas. You know, so I had my guy, a glass maker, Glass 2000 Edgar, come over to St. Thomas to make the glass case, okay? Because this is still clay. It's an oil clay, okay? I mean, it'll last for a while, but my goal is when this event is over, I probably might have to pull it out of this exhibit a little early because my goal is to cast this in bronze at this size, or maybe smaller. Okay, so casting in bronze is a very tedious process, and you have to find a foundry to do that. Okay, so that is pretty much the story of this sculpture. You know, just enjoy it. I had a blast making it. Believe me, it was really a labor of love, and for the young people who have never worked in clay as such, it is a forgiving material. Brother Africa talked about the wood carving over there. Wood and stone are not forgiving. Clay is a forgiving media. You can add, you can subtract, okay? But wood, once you chip that wood or chip that marble with that gouge or that chisel and hammer, that's it, okay? There's no putting back. Okay, so be aware of that, okay? That's why I love this media of clay, and I hope you all enjoy my presentation. And the other artists, I gotta give my kudos to them, because it is all a fabulous presentation. I want to thank Monica for the great work she's done, you know, and for y'all to come here and be a part of this event. Emancipation. We are emancipated, but nobody emancipated us. This was self-liberation. Okay, these slaves or these slave Virgin Islands, they did this themselves. And Governor Van Scholten, Governor General, was compelled to free them. And I will end it with that. Enjoy your evening and thank you for your time.